The French Riviera. To the world, it is a synonym for glamour, a sun-drenched coastline of azure water, of yachts bobbing in harbors, of casinos and film festivals. But in the off-season, particularly in the mid-1970s, a different mood could settle over the city of Nice. The winter sun was weaker, the wind from the sea carried a chill, and the grand ornate buildings along the Promenade des Anglais could feel less like palaces and more like fortresses, their shutters closed against the elements. It was in this quieter, more introspective Nice that our story takes root in the winter of 1976. And at the center of it all was a bank, the Société Générale, standing at 23 Avenue de Verdun. It was not just any bank, it was a regional hub, a clearinghouse for the wealth of the Côte d'Azur, and buried deep within its belly, accessible only through a labyrinth of corridors and a series of locked doors, was its heart, the main vault. I want you to picture this vault. It was not a simple safe, it was a chamber, a subterranean temple to money. Its door was a masterpiece of French engineering, a massive polished steel disc, studded with bolts and controlled by a complex dual combination lock. It was, for all intents and purposes, a perfect impregnable sphere of security, or so they thought, because perfection in the world of security is an illusion. It is a challenge, a gauntlet thrown down to the ambitious, the cunning, and the patient. The man who would pick up that gauntlet was not a known criminal mastermind. He was a ghost. His name, according to the scant records that survived, was Albert Spagliari, a former soldier, a photographer, a man with a charming smile and a mind that worked like a precision timepiece. He was a paradox, a man who loved the sun-drenched life of the Riviera, yet whose greatest masterpiece would be executed in the absolute darkness beneath its streets. He didn't assemble a team of thugs. He assembled a crew of specialists, a locksmith, an electronics expert, a demolition man. They were not brutes. They were artisans. Their canvas would be the city itself. Their tools would be not guns, but jackhammers, drills, and an almost superhuman patience. Their plan was one of breathtaking audacity. They would not go through the vault door. They would not try to crack the combination. They would not even enter the bank through its front door. Their plan was to go under it, to tunnel. But this was not the Knightsbridge robbery, where the tunnel spanned 100 meters from a nearby house. No, this was different. This was more brazen, more complex. Their point of entry was not a safe house, but the very streets of Nice, specifically the city's centuries-old sewer system. I still wonder about the first time Spagliari descended into that underworld. The shock of the transition from the clean, perfumed air of Nice to the damp, reeking darkness of the sewers. The sound of his boots splashing in sluggish, murky water, echoing in the vast, brick-lined tunnel. The beam of his flashlight cutting through the gloom, illuminating a hidden city of arches and conduits, a map of the city's secret anatomy. He must have walked for miles, a modern-day Theseus in the labyrinth, but without a thread, only a surveyor's map, and a singular fixed purpose, to find the exact spot directly beneath the Société Générale's vault. And he found it. The tunnel they needed to dig would be short, perhaps only 5 or 6 meters, but it would be vertical. They would have to burrow straight up through soil, through the foundation, through the reinforced concrete floor of the vault itself. It was a task of Herculean difficulty and danger. A single miscalculation, and they could flood the sewer with concrete, or worse, bring the entire bank floor crashing down upon them. Their base of operations was a small hidden chamber they carved out of the side of the sewer wall, a dry alcove where they could store their tools, change their clothes, and rest. For nearly 2 months, they became creatures of the night, their lives governed by the rhythm of the city above. They would descend after dark, their movements masked by the sounds of the evening traffic and the late-night revelry. They worked in shifts, one man at the face of the tunnel, chipping away with a pneumatic drill, the noise muffled by blankets, and the constant rush of water in the adjacent sewer channel. The work was excruciating. The air was thick with dust, and the stench of decay. They breathed through filters, their bodies caked in grime. They moved the excavated soil and rock in sacks, disposing of it deep within the uncharted sections of the sewer network. It was a life of profound isolation and physical strain, a testament to a focus so absolute it bordered on obsession. The final barrier was the vault floor itself, a thick slab of steel-reinforced concrete. This was where their demolition expert earned his keep. They used a thermic lance, a tool that burns at temperatures high enough to slice through steel and concrete. It was a weapon of light and fire in the absolute darkness. The process was slow, dangerous, generating intense heat and toxic fumes, but they persevered. And then, one night in July 1976, it happened. A final chunk of concrete gave way. A circle of darkness appeared in the vault floor above them. They had done it. They had breached the inner sanctum. They waited for the weekend. The Bastille Day holiday, July 14th, provided the perfect cover. A long weekend when the bank would be deserted for 3 full days. That Friday night they made their final ascent. One by one they hoisted themselves up through the hole, emerging not into a sterile modern vault, but into a scene from a fairy tale dragon's hoard. The vault was filled with safety deposit boxes, hundreds of them, lining the wall, but it was also filled with loose cash, stacks of francs, dollars, and Swiss francs, left in the open on shelves. There were jewels, gold bars, negotiable bonds. It was a treasure beyond their wildest calculations. What followed was not a frantic grab, but a methodical, almost leisurely harvest. They had time. They brought fine wine, cheese, and pâté with them. They picnicked inside the vault, surrounded by unimaginable wealth. They worked with the calm efficiency of men who had already won. They used crowbars to pop open the safety deposit boxes, their contents spilling out in a glittering cascade. They filled large, sturdy canvas bags with the most valuable, most portable items. They worked through the night, through the next day, through the next. They slept in shifts on the vault floor, surrounded by their plunder. It was an act of unparalleled arrogance, a silent, secret festival of avarice, held in the most secure room in the city. By the time they left, late on Sunday night, they had taken everything of value. They slipped back down into the sewer, dragging their heavy, precious cargo with them. They sealed the hole behind them as best they could, vanishing back into the darkness from which they had come. They left behind an empty vault, a hole in the floor, and the lingering scent of wine and pâté, a final mocking signature. The discovery on Monday morning was one of pure, unadulterated shock. Bank employees arrived to a scene that made no sense. The main doors were secure, the alarms were untripped, the vault door was locked, but inside it was a wasteland. The hole in the floor was the only explanation, a surreal and impossible wound. The police were baffled. The investigation initially went nowhere. How had they done it? Where had they come from? It was Spaggiari himself, arrested months later on an unrelated matter, who eventually boasted of the crime, providing details only the perpetrator could know. He was captured, but in a final act of theatrical flair, he escaped from a courtroom window, never to be officially seen again, becoming a permanent ghost in the legend. The official take was estimated to be between 30 and 60 million francs, a colossal sum for the time, but the true value, like Spaggiari himself, remains elusive. How much was in the safety deposit boxes, the contents of which were never fully declared by their secretive owners? We will never know. The Société Générale heist was more than a theft. It was a work of art, a critique of authority carved out of concrete and executed with a French flair for the dramatic. It proved that the most imposing doors are often the least relevant, that the true path to a fortress's heart might not be through its gates, but through its foundation. It's a story that lingers in the collective memory of Nice, not as a tale of violence, but as one of sublime, almost philosophical criminal elegance. A reminder that sometimes, the most dangerous men are not those who break the rules, but those who simply rewrite them, leaving behind nothing but a hole in the floor, a ghost of a legend, and an unsettling question that hangs in the air, as tangible as the mist from the sea. If the very ground beneath our feet is not safe, then what is?